Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today, I thought I'd give you an update on Hamshack 2.0 and a couple other things going on around the place. So this project has been kind of a life lesson, at least for me, because normally when I take a project on like this, it's rush, rush, rush. I set these weird timelines that I think I need to meet and just rush through the whole process, and it just winds up being usually really stressful. Every project that I've taken on like this, I wind up making it a very stressful project. One of the things that I do, I set these timelines that I know I can't meet, and so then it interferes with family stuff, it interferes with work stuff, and I get stressed out and I leave my work area a complete and utter mess because I never have time to clean anything. So this project, I've taken a different approach. And my dad was a contractor, carpenter for all of his adult life, essentially. And he had his own construction business for a while. I never could figure out why they made such an emphasis at the end of the day to clean up and clean the work site up. That was usually my job as a kid. Here, go take all these scraps of wood, put them in a pile, burn them. And I never could really figure out, why aren't we doing something else, something more productive? Well, I never caught on to that through most of my adult life till this project. I've stopped every once in a while, cleaned the work area up. It's made the whole thing go so much smoother, so much less stressful. And the other thing I've done is I haven't set these timelines that I know I'm never going to be able to meet. So when I come out and work on this project, I get tired of it, I walk away, and it's just been a nice, enjoyable, almost relaxing thing to come work on this. Now, the walls and the roof, that had to go up fairly quick. I wanted to get it waterproofed, which I did. But from that point on, it's been pretty relaxing to come out here and just tinker around, work a couple hours. I get tired of it, or just get tired in general, and I walk away from it. So this has been a great project and a great learning experience for me, because like I said, normally this is not how I approach projects at all. The only thing that I got kind of, and it's plumbing, anything to do with plumbing. I don't know what it is about plumbing, but I just do not like it. But the rest of it, the wiring, in fact, I enjoy wiring houses and things like this. It's something I've done for a long time. I'm decent at it. I understand it, and it's actually enjoyable. And in fact, this one, the wiring went so fast for me that I'm like, man, that got done too quick. That was the most enjoyable part of these projects usually for me, is the wiring. So anyway, part of that process was I needed to bring a new feed over. The guy who is building behind me here that we're kind of adding on to, he only ran a number 10 gauge wire, direct burial wire, over to that building, and that's not going to be nearly enough for what I'm doing here. So I knew I needed to bring a new feed out. So I decided to bring 1/0 wire out here. It's a 1/0 triplex. It's actually 1/0 and then a number 2 ground neutral. And it's about an inch, little over an inch diameter. So I decided I'll just run 1.5 inch conduit down low on the side of the house over to where the breaker panel is. I've got a 2-inch conduit that comes from the house over to this tower that's right outside this wall. I'll just kind of reroute that and use that conduit that's there. That conduit had 2-inch, or it's a 2-inch conduit, and it had LMR 400, one run of LMR 400, which I haven't used in years, and rotator cable and a control line going up to an antenna switch. So I thought, I'll just pull that junk out of there. When I do, I'll pull a pole rope back through and then pull that feed through. Well, when I went to pull that out, it moved about 2 feet, and I thought, oh, this is going to be no problem. Well, that's about all it moved. And I pulled and pulled as hard as I could on that thing. I think I may have got 4 feet out of there. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to hook the tractor bucket up and pull up on it with a nylon strap, and it'll come loose and come out. Well, what I wound up doing was pulling the conduit up out of the ground, and come to find out that wasn't actually conduit, it was water pipe. I put that in about 16 years ago, and I could have swore I put conduit in, and I swore I put it down at least 20 inches in the ground, and come to find out it was only down to maybe 8-10 inches, and it's water pipe. So that was okay that I ripped it up. We'll get to replace it with real conduit. So I'm going to run 1.5 inch conduit from the building over to the edge of the house and meet the conduit going to the breaker panel. I'm hoping to get to that later this week and finish that project up. The rest of the building, the roof's on, the metal roof's on, the siding showed up. I got the windows and doors now, so there's a lot I can start doing. But I'm going to take it fairly slow. This fall, I'm going to get a little more worked up about getting it done because I'm going to want my Hamshack out here for doing some contesting and just enjoying the radios. So I'm going to eventually want to push this a little faster, but for right now, I'm trying to push off the sheetrock work as long as I can, because besides plumbing, I think sheetrock's next on my list that I just don't like to do. So that pretty much takes care of the electrical. The panel's already wired in. I did make one mistake here. I wired all these breakers in and forgot that the feed's coming in from the bottom, so I'm gonna have to take all that wire loose to run the feed up to the top, but that's not gonna be a big deal. Let's see, what else do we have going on here? I spent a little bit of time making a kind of a proof of concept. A guy that owns a welding shop, who's a buddy of mine, gave me these I think they're 2-inch thick plate pieces of steel that he had left over from a project. They're about maybe 1 foot long, 4 inches wide. Originally, I was going to make a jaw crusher out of them, and I just haven't had time to mess with it. So I thought, I wonder if these would work to make just a little hand-operated stamp mill, because my old impact mill, I have no idea what I did with that thing. It was just a real small one I'd made. I don't know what I did with it. I can't find it. I must have cut it up for some other project that I don't remember doing. I don't know. So I decided I need a way to crush these rocks up, because I keep bringing all these samples in and I don't have a really good way to crush them. So I put that thing together, just threw some scraps of metal that I had laying around together, and I tried it, and it does take, decent sized rocks and breaks it down into 1/2 inch size rocks or less really good. That's one thing it does very well. Think there'll be gold in it? You don't? Crushing them down to powder size, it does not do so well. You have to put only a few in at a time. It's a really slow process, but it's a good proof of concept. So what I may do is keep it like that and then build me another impact mill. So break it down into those little small 1/2 inch pieces and drop it in the impact mill. Haven't decided yet, but I posted that, I think, on Facebook, those plates. What do you think I'm doing with it? No, it was just a kind of a proof of concept on a 1 stamp mill. Originally, I thought if it worked well, I would build a stand and a motor and have it lift itself up and just sit there and pound rock. But after playing with it a while, if it's any amount of rock, it just levels itself out in there, and it doesn't crush anymore. So it, like I said, it works really good for breaking big rocks into those about 1/2 inch pieces. Beyond that, it doesn't work very good. There's kind of a 2-part funny story here on this wiring that I almost forgot to bring up. So I was so proud of myself. The breaker panel inside the house, I got the knockout out of it to see where there's only one knockout on that side of the panel that was big enough to run that 1.5 inch conduit in. So I knocked it out, looked in there, and when I'd remodeled 4-6 years ago now, I put some expanding foam on that side of that breaker panel. And I kind of dug through it, didn't see any wiring. I thought, okay, cool, there's no problem there. So I took a drill and drilled out through the wall, but I had to drill at kind of an angle. so I knew where to drill from the other side to bring that conduit in. Well, it was kind of a Kentucky windage thing. I could see where the hole come out, but I knew it was at an angle, so I kind of figured out, okay, if I drill right here, I should meet up. And sure enough, that hole wound up exactly perfect, probably one of the few times that's ever happened to me. It wound up perfect lined up with that hole. The conduit with the fitting just slid right in there. I was able to put it on. And away we go. I ran the conduit down the side of the wall. I was done with that whole thing in like 30 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I walk in the house to get a drink, and my wife says, "Hey, the washing machine is holding our sheets hostage." I'm like, it's doing what? She says, I can't get the door open. I go check, and that's one of those, I think it's a new Samsung. If it loses power mid-cycle, the door stays locked till the power comes back on and it finishes its cycle. So I'm like, well, that's weird. So I go to the fridge to get a drink, and the light's off in the fridge. I'm like, great. The power's off. It must have been something, I bumped a breaker or something in that breaker panel. So I go searching, trying to figure out what I'd done, and I find the one that's labeled fridge, and sure enough, it's okay. And I'm like, well, that's strange. Follow the wire out, it looks fine. Follow the neutral over, fine. It's where it's supposed to be. The hot side's where it's supposed to be. The ground's hooked up. I'm like, what in the world's going on? And I usually don't believe much in coincidences. By coincidence, did I have an outlet problem? Because I know it feeds into one outlet box and then feeds about 4 others from there. Did I have a problem in that box? Because this house was built in '79, and twice I've had issues with outlets, the wiring they did in there going bad, because they use these brass crimp things in some of them. They didn't on all of them, but every one that I've found that they've used those brass things, I've had some issues with them. So I take the outlet off. Nope, that's not the problem. Maybe this feeds in from the other side. So I take all 4 outlets apart, trying to figure out what the problem is. Can't find it. Take the meter, run in on the hot side to neutral, no voltage. Hot side to ground, I've got 120 volts. I'm like, well, that's kind of strange. What did I do here? So I go back and double check that neutral all the way back as far as I can and look in the breaker box. It's all fine. Like, what in the world just happened here? So I go back and I check the hot side to another outlet that I know works. On the neutral side on it, sure enough, 120 volts. I'm like, okay, we've obviously got a neutral problem here. And I bet you I spent 3 hours trying to hunt that thing down. And sure enough, it wasn't a coincidence. I thought, is there some chance I drilled into a wire? I had to take that conduit that I was so proud of back out, and of course I'd already put expanding foam around it, and so I had to poke around and get all that out of there so the conduit would come back out. Get it out, and I look in there and I don't see any issue at all. I'm like, well, that is just, what is going on here? I look a little closer, I start digging around in there with the screwdriver, and sure enough, in that old expanding foam, I see something sticking out there. Sure enough, I drilled right through the neutral side of that Romex wire. Couldn't believe it. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a nightmare. I bet you that thing goes right out of the breaker box and into a wall, so I don't have any slack to work with. This is going to be terrible. Come to find out, luckily, they'd ran it out of that breaker box, down around the bottom, and over to the other side, and then out through the wall. So I had about 10 inches of slack to work with there. So I was able to pull it back down and bring it in the other side of the breaker box and get it. I had plenty of wire to reach back over to that breaker again. Got it wired back up, got it going. I couldn't believe it went that easy. After I actually found the problem, I think I had it back operational in about 20 minutes or so. Then I put the conduit back in, and of course, going in the second time was not nearly as easy. I bet you it took me 15 minutes to get it pushed. The first time it just popped right in. Second time, because there was some of that expanding foam left that I just sprayed in there, I had a heck of a time getting it lined back up. But finally got it, and it worked out. So today, or last night, we come out to do a little workout here. Went to use the air compressor, no air. Tried to turn it on, no electricity. Like, well, that's interesting. Same process, go back in, and I must have bumped something in this breaker panel. The wire that feeds out here looks fine. It goes out. It doesn't even go out on the side I drilled through. I have no idea why there's no power out here. I spent the last hour trying to figure it out, and I finally I'm giving up, because right now I've got a temporary feed off that 10 gauge wire coming in here just to run stuff while I'm working. So it put a little more priority on getting that new feed pulled over here so I can get this thing powered up and run my chargers and the air compressor and everything that I need out here. So I don't know what in the world I did with that other cable. I don't think I drilled through it, but for some reason there's a junction box midpoint. I looked in there. It's somewhere between the breaker panel and that junction box. I've got a broken wire, and where, I have absolutely no idea. It's obviously probably something I did, but not a clue. So I'm going to abandon that wire. In fact, I'm going to go back in there in just a minute and disconnect it from the breaker panel. And I'm going to probably start digging this evening on the trench to get that conduit over here to the building. So just wanted to give you guys an update and a kind of a little funny story about the electrical wire. It was just funny. My wife in the washing machine holding the sheets hostage. So anyway, thanks for watching, subscribing, and we'll see you guys on the next video.